Yeah, it was just kind of, I remember thinking in that game, it was kind of hard to juggle. Like, I remember I didn't go back and replay levels because I was just like, I'm just happy to have beaten it. It was getting kind of stressful.
That's the thing.
I'm just done.
The thing that I loved about
way,
Pikmin 2 was it removed so much of the stress.
Exact, because Pikmin 1 is super stressful.
Very stressful.
And then Pikmin 2 was just like,
I can take this at my own pace.
I can
do
take it in
whatever the fuck I want during the day. Like,
I
this
can take
take
it in,
me
like,
as many as I need.
Exploration.
Hey everybody, welcome to Pursuing Pixels. This is episode number 66, and my name's Kevin Portelli, and I'm here tonight with Randall Nolery.
Hey everybody.
And John Hines.
Hello.
And we are back as always to talk about some video games, and maybe this will be a special episode. I might have mentioned this when we were talking about Wayne Gretzky's 3D hockey, because 66 has always been my favorite number.
Okay.
All because of Mario Lemieux. He was my favorite hockey player growing up.
That's where my head went. Yep.
It's not actually going to be a special episode, but I just wanted to give a little shout out to Mario Lemieux, because I actually think he's a good guy. And a great
awesome
hockey player.
So.
Yeah. He's amazing. I think he scored a goal in like his first less than 10 seconds on the ice in the NHL, which is pretty crazy. He just like won the face off, charged it down the ice, and scored.
Get out of my way, guys.
Which is pretty amazing.
Yeah.
But anyways, enough about hockey. We're going a little Michigan on John again.
No, that's good. I always appreciate it.
Hey, Seattle's about to have their team, so I'm definitely down.
Really?
Wait, what?
Yeah. The Seattle
NHL
Kraken,
team,
man. Yeah.
The Kraken? I saw people talking about that, but I just assumed it was like some team changing their name or something.
That is
it's
Seattle's
a full-on
NHL expansion team that we are getting next year.
Heck yeah.
An expansion team before they get the NBA back. Come on.
Sore subject.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
Rest in peace, Supersonics.
Oh, man. Sean Kemp.
I know.
You'll be remembered.
Yup.
You'll be remembered.
That's right.
And Gary Payton.
Yeah.
And Kevin Durant.
Dang it.
But anyways, before we get sidetracked on the basketball, because I know I'll cut you guys short before we get too off track here.
The Suns went 8-0 and are still not making the postseason. I'm mad.
Stop it, John.
But for once, or I shouldn't say for once, but again, we're playing some new games this week, or at least a new game. But Randall and I, thanks to PlayStation Plus, and I was just talking trash in our Discord about like, I'm canceling my PlayStation Plus. They never put anything good on there. It's always, PlayStation 3 games or a collection of games I already own or whatever. And then of course, Fall Guys gets released, and day one, it's available on PlayStation Plus, and I'm like, well, I got a month left before my account expires.
Right.
So why don't I check this out? And DJ's been kind of harassing us in the Discord. So if you're missing DJ, by the way, he's hanging out in the Discord every now and again.
Got plenty of content there for you.
Yeah. Talking trash constantly and beating games left and right.
Beating games at a much faster pace than any of us.
Yes.
Always.
Yeah. But yeah, so him and I actually checked out some Fall Guys together. I played a little bit on my own, just getting warmed up before he jumped on. And then I know you played just on your own. There's no way to play solo, but all of this is online.
That was good that you got the vibe of the game before you played with somebody else. I really recommend that as a way forward when you play multiplayer.
Oh, God. I know. Maybe I'll play Diablo again someday the right way, but I digress. But yeah, with Fall Guys, and the cool thing, I've probably played about 3 hours. I guess before I get too far into it, the game itself is kind of like, I don't know, those like game shows. Like it kind of reminds me of what was that show, like that MXC show?
Most Extreme Elimination Challenge.
Yeah, and I know that was based off it was like, just subbed or dubbed over another actual show.
Right.
It's like those.
It's like a Mario Party mini game or something like that, but made into a battle royale with like extra chaos.
Yeah, that's a good way to put it. And there's sort of like some of the courses, they're like kind of obstacle courses.
Yeah.
So that it kind of reminds me of that like Ninja Warrior or whatever that's called. Like way more like kind of goofy than that. But like, there's just tons. What I was starting to say is like I've probably played about 3 hours or so now, and like still I'm seeing like different events. Like I've definitely seen some repeats. It just kind of shuffles through a bunch of random events.
Right.
But I'm still seeing games that I haven't played yet. Like I'll see them shuffling through like the queue, and so there's definitely quite a bit of variety. I thought like in the time I've played, and again I was playing with somebody else and chatting with DJ while I was playing, so that was adding to the fun. We were just kind of catching up and stuff as well.
Yeah.
But I could have easily kept playing more. I had a job interview that I had to stop and cut it short for, but
good reason.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. But I was kind of bummed. I was like, I could keep playing this, and we did actually hop on for a little bit longer after. And I was having a lot of fun. There's a ton of cool mini games. But what are you thinking, Randall? I'm rambling on, and we can maybe get into some of our favorite games after that.
Yeah, I only ended up playing like 2 or 3 sessions, but I had like I know at first it was so crazy popular both on PC and on PlayStation 4 that they were having server issues for a while. So I'm like, I'm gonna download this, but we'll see if I can actually get in or not. But I was able to, no problem. It probably helped that it was the same day you guys did, which I think was like a day or 2 after they like really launched the thing. But yeah, I had a ton of fun. Just a few sessions, although I think on my second run through, I did get to like the final area seemingly, but stood no chance of winning.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. Like there's a few of the games just like in Mario Party, and that's a good point. Like DJ and I mentioned that as well. Like it's like extended Mario Party mini games without the board game stuff in between. And with a little more chaos. Like, and I would say like they're like the controls, like they can't be too tight, because if they were too tight, I like that's part of the chaos. Like they're like a little slippery, a little wobbly. Like you kind of control these like jelly bean-esque characters that just like they just kind of like tumble around. Like if you fall from too high, they just kind of like roll a little bit. Like you can't land on your feet from certain heights, and like you can pretty much just run and jump, and I think you can grab onto ledges and pull yourself up, and that's rarely used if at all.
And prepare to fall down a lot.
Yeah.
In the chaos. As you just roll around in your jelly bean form with whatever stupid like wolf hat or crocodile thing you have on your head.
Yeah, and it has like kind of like almost like a free to play vibe in that sense of like you're just unlocking new costumes all the time. It looks like there's like a store you can buy stuff to if you want to, but it seems to be purely cosmetic. There are no stats, no anything like that.
No, it's fun that
in this game. But like one of the games that DJ and I really love, that's one of the final events. Like we made it to the final round quite a few times.
Nice.
And there's usually about 4 or 5 rounds. It just depends. You start with 60 players every time.
Yep.
And then like depending on what event you play, like a certain number of players will get eliminated. And then you move along. And again, sometimes like certain rounds will just actually be like a time thing, or certain rounds will be like once 45 people reach the finish line, that's when that event ends.
Oh,
but some will be like,
I felt like that happened to me where I was like the last one over the gate type of thing, like more than once. I'm like, and that's the end. Okay, well, geez,
just barely made it. But yeah, it's exciting, and it's kind of confusing because once people finish, you don't see them waiting at the finish line; they just like disappear.
Yeah.
And one of my favorite things is actually because you can see up in the corner if it is one of those events, like it'll say like 35 out of 45 have completed the race or whatever. Oh, okay. So there'll be people standing right at the finish line, and you can kind of almost like Little Big Planet style like emote like with your character and taunt. So people will just be like standing at the finish line, like sticking their tongue out, waving at you. It's kind of goofy. It's like pure good fun. Like DJ and I were just like giggling like a bunch of little kids, and it was awesome. I was having a blast, and like again, it's pretty rare that like usually like when DJ and I are playing online, I'm always the one to pull the plug. And again, I was in this case because I had to do the interview, but I texted him like immediately, like, hey, that was a little quicker than I thought. Maybe that means the interview didn't go that well, but hey, that was a little quicker than I thought. So like, you want to hop back on? And like, oh yeah, for sure. So we hopped right back on and started playing again. And like, usually that is not me. Like I like to jump around a lot. Right. I'm usually not just sinking hours into a game, and I haven't played a ton, but yeah, there's some really cool events like that are almost like aggro craggy. You know, you're like climbing up as like the ooze is rising from the bottom, and you gotta.
I love that.
Again, that's one of the events where like. What's that?
I love that Nickelodeon Guts reference. Continue.
Oh, yeah.
Global League Guts.
Yeah.
Mike O'Malley, he's so good. Or I can never remember if it's Mark O'Malley or Mike O'Malley.
I think it's
great.
Mark.
Either one.
I was
Not
gonna
that
guess
it
both
matters.
great.
Yeah.
But, yeah.
Like,
They're both great.
Yeah.
He had like a recurring role in My Name is Earl as like a cop, and he was pretty funny. But anyways, we're getting totally sidetracked a bunch on this episode. But yeah, one of the events like in the final round that DJ and I really enjoyed is like this. You're kind of in this hexagon. They're like they kind of look like honeycombs to me, and it's like there's probably like 8 tiers of this like hexagon layer that every time you touch a hexagon panel, it disappears like, you know, a second or so later. And there's probably about 15 people in that final round. So you all start on the top tier and you're running around like crazy. And you just like panels are disappearing left and right. So people will be falling. Everyone eventually will start being on different tiers at a time. So you could be killing it. Like, oh, I'm still on the top tier. I haven't fallen down yet.
Yeah.
But then you fall down and like you could drop 3 stories at once because you're falling just through it, but there's nothing you can really do to avoid it. So like, because DJ, I watched, you can like spectate when you're playing with, actually when you're playing with anyone, I think, but when I was spectating DJ,
Sure.
and he was, instead of running around, he was just like standing on a panel, jumping like one at a time. But again, even when he would do that and stay on the top tier, or like be like, he was like 3 or 4 tiers above everybody, made one mistake and just dropped all the way down to the bottom tier. And it's like, he still came pretty close, but like I think he came in 3rd place or something overall.
That's still
but
really
like,
good.
Yeah. But yeah, there's a ton of fun mini games. I definitely tend to lean towards the race ones.
Yeah.
And the ones that are a little less luck based. Like there's one where you just kind of charge at like these doors, and they're just kind of like, there's 6 doors basically. This is usually the first event. If it comes up randomly, like there's quite a few, like there's probably like 15 or 20 different events.
Feels like it, yeah.
Like there's stuff like you're playing soccer, like there's all kinds of different stuff.
Ooh,
There's
I didn't
like
get
kind of like
soccer.
There's like, yeah, it's almost like a little mini, way slower pace, but like Rocket League. You're like,
man.
are they also
keeping
like tier based? Like these are the only ones that appear when there are X number of players. These are the only ones that appear like when there are less.
I think there are some that will appear in multiple tiers, like there were like with a slight modification.
So you're not running into one that's like designed for 100 players when there's only
Correct.
Like
3. They definitely have it like ironed out in that sense. Yeah. So this first event, or this one, will always be, I have never seen it anywhere but the first event, but yeah, it'll be like 6 or 7 doors. Everyone's just charging, and they'll just, 5 of the 7 will be open, but it's just random. There's no way to tell. And it's just kind of like, you're just at the mercy of the randomness. And then as you get to the end, there's like 3, it just keeps getting narrower and narrower. And then there's only 3 and only one of them opens. And then eventually, if there's, everybody just kind of wedges in, and it's again, gets a little physicsy, and everyone's just kind of tumbling around. But it does, like it, in that Mario Party sense, you feel a little bit out of control in some of the games of like, I don't think I can do anything about winning this.
Yeah, you have to know that going
mercy.
in when you're playing a game like this. Like, you're just there to have fun, and you have to let the chaos take hold. You can't be hyper competitive to that degree.
You're not necessarily winning because you're the best person at PUBG. Like, there's always some bit of randomness that you just kind of have to embrace.
Definitely.
Yeah. No, but I'm having a blast with it. We got to sync up and play. Me and you, Randall, and with DJ, and with anybody else that's got a PS4 too.
Apparently by the end of the month, Kevin, because you're PS4.
Yeah, I know. I think September 15th. So I got exactly a month, pretty much from today.
You got some time.
Maybe I'll renew. But I'm still I don't think I'm going to. There's not enough. There's not enough value there for me these days.
No,
I don't have a job, man.
It's mostly just re-releases of stuff we bought. Like it's totally valid.
Yeah, ever since they stopped doing the PlayStation Vita double dip releases that focused kind of on the indie stuff, just it lost its value a little bit to me, especially because I don't play online, even though, again, we're talking about this game is only online. I guess we should specify that. And unfortunately, there's no split screen. Right. Like you can't play, you and Tina can't play split screen online together.
Right.
So
yeah, because that's too bad. It'd be a lot of fun that way to try that out. But
that's a little bit of a bummer, but no, not a big deal.
Yeah. it's still good. And she would have to have her own online account more than likely for that to actually work. So
right. That's true. Yeah. Another PS Plus account to subscribe to.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
But anyways, I think we could pretty much wrap up Fall Guys there, and maybe we'll follow up a little bit more.
Yeah.
Unless
Fall
you got
Guys
more to
Ultimate Knockout.
Oh yeah. Which I've never seen anybody call it that.
Yeah,
so.
I've also never.
I didn't even know it had that subtitle.
You heard it here first.
I literally did.
Literally. For once using that term properly. But not you, me, John, by the way. But why don't we move on to Dauntless, another game that we've been playing online. I only played one little short session with Mikey and our buddy Mikey and John. But John, why don't you take the lead on this one, because you've been playing apparently every day.
Yeah, I am a sucker for those daily login bonuses and just checking boxes. And it's one of those. It's a free to play game. It's a 3D action game along the lines of a Monster Hunter. Very similar, but much more streamlined and simplified than that series. Like,
nice.
There's a lot of like mechanics that are very similar. It's a very combo-based action game where different weapons handled differently, and you have to each of them has its own strengths against different enemies, and you can find a different play style that really appeals to you as a player. Like, I know that when Kevin and I were playing together, like, we were talking about specific weapons that we each preferred, and I don't think we had any overlap really between the two of us.
Jeez.
Yeah, I remember I was like, I like that staff or whatever, and you were just like, what?
Yeah, that's what sucks. But that's good because it means that you have a balanced team or a balanced loadout. Not everybody's going to have the same preferences as you, and that's definitely something that I experienced with Monster Hunter. But Monster Hunter is a much slower, more deliberate game.
Yeah,
and
unfriendly seemingly compared to what it sounds like here.
Yes, I think the main issue that I have with Monster Hunter is that once I start playing it, I really have to dedicate myself to commit to playing that game for a while, because any amount of time I spent away from that game just undoes every bit of effort that I've put into it. Where Dauntless, I haven't put it down yet, so I haven't really experienced it. But there's the combos that you have in this action game are not as complicated. I've pretty much nailed down my 3 favorite weapons and what my go-to combos for those are, depending on the situation. I'll switch it up because it's a free-to-play seasonal game, like Fortnite or another one of those massively multiplayer ones where they're trying to make money off of you either being an elite subscriber or spending real money on the in-game currency for that. There is constantly stuff to do. There's always quests that will move you up in rank during the season. So unfortunately, we started playing right as a season ended, so I had a massive amount of experience just go completely to waste because I was like, cool, I can't really use this towards anything, but I still want to keep playing, so I guess I'm just going to keep leveling up. Yeah, but it was enjoyable. Mikey and I played a little bit for the first story, and basically the opening area just completely, by the time that Kevin joined us, you have your hub world where you're going around and crafting your new weapons and new armor and new items, and that area completely got destroyed in the last season. So by the time that Kevin played, Mikey and I were getting used to a whole new area that was completely brand new to us as much as it was to Kevin.
Wait, so there's persistent stuff happening story-wise in the environment that's happening?
Yeah.
Wow.
It was actually really impressive. It's such
that's ambitious.
It's a weird
the way
thing.
you were describing it, I was just like, wait, what? This hub is not what it was when you started?
Right.
And you were just like, yeah, no, this is completely different.
Right.
And I was just like, holy shit. It's not just it's not just it got ravaged. It's it is just different.
Yeah, no. And the in the original storyline, that area got obliterated and they were rebuilding in this new area, which
What a cool concept.
It's really impressive, but at the same time, I'm a very stubborn person when it comes to like free to play games. And I honestly don't think I will be spending money on this game. And that's, kind of, puts me in a moral quandary of, there's so much effort being put into this game, but also like, is the free to play model like a predatory one? Is it like mostly making their money off of, people with gambling addictions, or children like who are just, so it's
tough.
It's a really weird area, like morally, when I'm approaching this game, but at the same time, this is a really well put together, like this is, that was the other thing when I was thinking about, I played, free to play games back when Newgrounds or Flash games were put on the internet.
Of course.
And I put in hundreds of hours into those. And the idea of being a teen and playing this game now and just having a fully fleshed out free like 3D game to inhabit and spend all my time in is mind-boggling, that the amount of effort and care that is put into these games that are, for all intents and purposes, you can just play for free.
It is kind of a bummer because, like you said, there are these like predatory tactics or whatever you want to call them that they could at least potentially be using. But, people like us could say like, hey, we just want to throw the developer a few bucks. I'm just going to buy a cool suit of armor.
Right.
Yeah.
Like not even necessarily because I want that armor so bad, but just like I want to give this developer $5 or $10 because I'm playing this game and I like it.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm playing for free and like whatever. Or even I'll just buy some of the currency just to give them a few bucks and I'll buy a bunch of upgrades or whatever.
Right.
But like, again, like knowing that there are people that can't shut that off, that are just going to, and even thinking about how this game cycles through seasons like that, and like these picturing people on that, like that pressure of like the season's going to end. I just like, I know what you mean, but it is a bummer because it is like, I don't mind the idea of like, hey, this free to play game and throw us a few bucks if you like a lot. That's like kind of almost how these itch.io games feel to me. A lot of times some of them you can purchase, but some of them are just free to download, and then it's just like you can tip, or they'll have like a recommended price.
Right.
And a lot of times I'll do that, but
and that's like the difference between those or at least most of those, are games that have ends.
Yes.
Or like they're not something
they're not
that you're
continuously
supposed to come
on.
back to like every month and replay.
Right.
So it's a really difficult line for, I don't know, just games as service that I'm not entirely comfortable with, but at the same time, I also want to like applaud them when they're doing a good job, because I really do think, like, as someone who is a fan of the Monster Hunter series, but honestly did prefer that it was a little bit more accessible or like was easily playable with friends, like having a game like this where I can just log on at any time and be like, yeah, I'll play a few rounds of this and log off. Like that's a really nice feeling, and it scratches an itch that like,
and it's crossplay too, because we were playing on, both of us were playing on Switch, and then our buddy Mikey was playing on PC.
That's
and pretty
so
much
cool.
No issues with that.
That's awesome. I love that.
And I got to second all of that, John. Like, I haven't played as much as you, obviously. I haven't played since that session. But I'm like itching to play again with all of us. Like the next time we can get a gaming session with the boss fight crew, like I'm really looking forward to it. Cause like you said, it plays very much like Monster Hunter, but like a little more fluidly, a little quicker, especially obviously depending on which weapon you pick. But like with my staff, with my Donatello bow, it's pretty great. And it just controls so smooth. Like so many of these free to play games, especially on the Switch, not to knock on the Switch, we obviously love it, but like they do play a little clunkier. Sure. I think I booted up Warframe on the Switch at one point. And it was just like, oh man, I don't know. I don't know if this can handle this.
Not
but
the lead
I
platform
thought it was
for that. No.
Yes. But I was really impressed. And again, even somebody who, like, we with the band, we played Diablo 3, and obviously I wasn't super pumped on that experience. And this is kind of a similar style of game, or at least sort of,
it's like a loot collecting game. You're spending effort into like crafting and like going forward, like continuously upgrading your gear and always trying to get a pursuit of higher numbers.
Sure. Yeah, and 4 players.
Yeah. Okay.
And online.
I've got 4 players.
So yeah. I'm stretching a little bit maybe, but yeah, I will play this any day with you guys over Diablo. I will push for this game over Diablo.
There it comes again.
So
Yeah.
It always comes back to Diablo.
yeah, but yeah, I'm definitely a fan of Dauntless for sure. Are you seeing any new monsters, John, like that you haven't seen yet as you play every day? Or
I mean, and that is also a thing. Like the game really front loads the dopamine, where you're just constantly like encountering new enemy types and new weapon types, and you're upgrading, and you're given a ton of resources right at the beginning, so that you can move through those skill trees very quickly. But once you have played for a couple weeks, then that really slows down, and it comes out at like a trickle pace. So yes, I have been encountering new enemies, but it has taken a lot of time and effort, like nowhere near the amount that you get at the beginning. But at the same time, the lore segment or whatever, the journal part of the menu says like there's only like 22 monsters total in the game, and when you encounter 10 of them right off the bat, they do kind of have to eke that out slower.
Sure.
They're not just gonna have you encounter everything in the game like right at the beginning. So I think it's a decent pace, but I don't know if I was say playing this game once a week as opposed to once a day, if that might be a little bit harder to get through.
Right.
Yeah. There'd probably be more of a draw if you're like playing with friends all the time too. So
absolutely.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Well, I'm going to move on from there to a game that I've been playing with no segue whatsoever. A game that I started playing on Game Pass recently called Sea Salt. And for some reason, this game actually kind of reminds me of Carry On in a weird way. And I'm going to have a tough time describing this game a little bit. But it's from a developer called YCJY, and I don't know what that stands for. I think it might be like, it seems like it's 2 people. It might be their initials.
Oh, okay.
But it's like this like kind of really zoomed out pixel art style game. It's kind of like this gothic horror, like seaside town. Like I can't tell if you're like controlling like the Kraken in some way, and you're like attacking like there's like these little cutscenes with like the Archbishop, and they're like, you're constantly like chasing the Archbishop in some way.
Okay.
And and the cutscenes seem to like be totally separate from the gameplay kind of. But essentially like you start off, and it's not a roguelike, but there is like an arena mode and a few different modes. But like if you're playing through the regular story, you start off with this one apostle, and that's the only apostle that I have unlocked, but there are more, and I'll get into that a little bit later. But there's this one apostle, and you start with this swarm of enemies, and they're like I think it's just called the Swarm. And like you play through the kind of tutorial section, and you end up unlocking these cards, which you'll get like a worm, and you'll get crabs, and you get all these like kind of monsters and creatures essentially.
Okay.
I got like these spitting alien looking creatures and like little like minions essentially. And you're it's a top down perspective game, and you're sort of controlling, it's not a cursor per se, but you kind of just have this like, it is kind of like that. You can control with the right stick, you can move the camera around a little bit, but then you're controlling this cursor, and then your minions kind of follow that around. So almost like a little bit like Pikmin style.
Yeah.
Although you don't have a character that you are directly controlling, but you kind of like how Olimar would have that like cursor.
I don't think Captain Olimar
would
would fit in this universe, sounds like.
No, not at all. Not at all. But
I don't know. Pikmin gets kind of gruesome.
That's fair.
Yeah. He'd be protected with his helmet and everything. But essentially, I mean, you are kind of playing, the reason I kind of mentioned Carry On is you are kind of sort of seemingly playing as the villain here, although the Archbishop doesn't seem like he's up to any good either. I'm not getting a good vibe from him, but I mean, you are like, you kind of like raid this pirate ship in the tutorial, and like when you kill the boss, like it's a pretty easy boss, but when you kill the boss at the end of the tutorial, you're like, these tentacles come and like rip them apart limb from limb. Ooh. And like it's kind of gruesome. Yeah, it's pretty awesome. I really when I saw that, I was just like, yes. And again, we've talked about it on the podcast a bunch. I'm not usually into that stuff, but maybe I am, because there's a ton of games that I'm just like, yeah,
to find the right.
But it's cool. Yeah, I'm just like, but it's cool in this game.
That's funny.
But yeah, it's like it kind of teaches you. So like you basically, it's interesting. You're using the right trigger is your only really button that you're controlling with, and that is your attack button. And it will, again, you have some characters. So there's a few different stats, and I don't remember all of them, but there's like, and there's with each card. So like you're collecting gold as you kill enemies, which are people. And if you kill like the humans that aren't enemies, they give you gold. And if you kill the enemies, they usually don't give you gold, except for like the heftier enemies. And then you can sometimes like break boxes and do some other things and like get some money that way.
Yeah.
And then there'll be shrines as well. So either when you fill up your sack of gold, you can like essentially buy a card and like add a new group of minions with that. Like whatever card you pick, it'll add that group of minions.
That's cool.
So like you start off with like so like the worm, for example, when you buy that card, and you don't have to buy it. It's just like once you fill up the gold, it's like you unlock it. It's like a buff almost.
Gotcha.
And then same thing when you get the shrine, it's same thing. You just pick a new card. But like when you get like the cultist, which is a character that's kind of like this, you only get 3 of them at a time, but they have more health than the other characters. They're a little bit slower, but they can attack from ranged. Or from a range, and like so every character, and they also one of the other stats is also horror, and I think that's like the closer you get to enemies, they run away, like they get scared. So like if you're in a big, like one of my favorite creatures or whatever is the crab, because they just really swarm in. You get a bunch of them. They have really high health stats. And they don't do a ton of damage, but because you have so many of them and you can just stockpile them, they just like you can swarm around enemies and then hit the pull the trigger down and they just start chomping away. And you can just hear their claws cracking. It's just like, I don't know, something about this game, and like it has a really cool like overworld map that kind of is like Ghost and Goblin style, or like Castlevania. Like you can like see, and you can even pick branching paths.
I love
and
that.
Then so,
I'm a sucker for that.
Yeah, it's so cool. And then there's like an arena mode as well, which seems to be a little bit more like roguelike style, like where you'll just like, instead of there's no shrines in the arena mode, but you're in like in arena, and there seems to be maybe some different ones that I can unlock, but I only have one for now. But there'll be just 15 waves of enemies. The 15th wave will be a boss fight.
Okay.
And some of the bosses are like, they have like a little bit of an attack pattern, nothing crazy, but you do have to kind of, because you're controlling this swarm of enemies, it's kind of, of creatures, it's kind of difficult to, to avoid an attack.
Right.
It's difficult to avoid. Some enemies are throwing like Molotov cocktails or like torches or something at you, or shooting like arcing bow and arrows at you.
There will be some casualties.
Yeah. You're definitely losing a lot of creatures along the way. But in the arena mode, you're actually, every time you clear a wave, you get to pick a new card. So you're either filling up your gold sack and getting a new card, or just clearing a wave and getting a new card.
Nice.
And I just really am hooked on this game, and unfortunately I have a small gripe, but I think it's in the works of being fixed right now.
Okay.
Because there is a little bit of a bug. So I mentioned there's some other apostles, and you have to unlock them by clearing certain stats, like clearing 30 waves in the arena mode, or clearing or collecting 50,000 gold, or so, whatever the amount of gold is, and like just different kind of like Risk of Rain style like challenges that you have to complete.
Right.
But there have been 2 times now that I've booted it up, and all of my progress only on that front, like my gameplay progress is saved, but like my unlock, like I had cleared 28 of 30 waves, and I booted it up today to play a little bit before, because I was like, I'll clear 2 more waves and try to play with 1 more character, so I have a little more to talk about.
Yeah.
No dice. I was down to 0 again. So like, I have heard
so what's the distinction between your progress and like your unlocks? Like,
so like my like it's like let's say like another roguelike, like Dead Cells or something, where you're like collecting a currency that you have to spend like in the hub.
Yeah.
That might even actually not be how Dead Cells works. I haven't played that in a while.
Yeah, I think it is.
But but like essentially if you were losing that currency, like so like any progress, like.
But would you still have like the items and the perks that you unlock?
I have all the cards that I have unlocked, but anything, and there are no other perks beyond that, but like it doesn't save any. It hasn't saved any progress I've made towards unlocking anything else.
Gotcha. So
player wise.
So once you unlock something, it's there, but like any progress that you have, like say if you only like partially complete like a challenge or something,
Or like in the story mode, like the level that I'm on is still there. Like I can start the story mode where I left off at, but I can only pick that first apostle or that first character. So I know weird. I was reading some tweets on the developer's Twitter earlier today. And it sounds like there's some issues with this on the Switch as well. But it sounds like they have like isolated what the bug is and they're working on getting it patched and may have even already submitted that like fairly recently. So it's something that they're actively working on, and I will still play through the story mode of this game, even especially if I'm still getting all the cards and everything.
Right.
But I would like once I started playing the arena mode, I was like, oh, I could get hooked on this game. Just playing like depending on what the end goal is of the arena mode, I guess.
Yeah.
But like it really is just a really fun. It's really fun to like manage and like try out different modes, and each apostle you can kind of see what they have. So like the main apostle that I have just starts out with like a swarm of like 25 minions, which are like the basic enemies or the basic minions or creatures or whatever. But like some will be like, oh, they start out with 3 worms and 4 of this and 5 flies, which are fat. Every creature has different stats again.
Yeah.
So yeah, just a really, really cool game, really cool art style. Again, it has a little bit of that gruesome, although I will say it's not terribly gory, apart from when the Kraken or whatever just rips the boss apart limb from limb. But like otherwise you don't see, it's like so pixelated and zoomed out, it's like you don't really see much.
Yeah.
But yeah, really cool game. It's really unique. There's not much like it.
Yeah.
Although I know I did compare it to Pikmin, and I think that we're all pretty excited that Pikmin 3, we were talking a little bit before the podcast got started, that Pikmin 3 just got announced for Nintendo Switch, a deluxe edition, I think is what they're calling it.
Yes,
right?
it is.
And we were actually kind of discussing, I wonder how that's going to work. Without having like the Wii U had 2 screens,
right?
Your TV and the gamepad. So, but we were just kind of shooting the shit about Pikmin and how much we loved it. So, I guess we could just talk a little Pikmin for the hell of it, because this game kind of reminded me of it.
Well, because we've all played Pikmin 3, haven't we?
I've played
some
all
extent
3 Pikmin games. Yeah, I've played through all of them actually.
I purchased Pikmin 3. I did not play very much of it,
but you did play it.
Barely.
It's hard. I think it's the hardest of the bunch. Well, I don't know. Pikmin 1 is tough too.
They all have their different level. Like Pikmin 1, I think is the most stressful out of the 3.
From what
I think Pikmin 3 is a good midway point between 1 and 2 in that it still has a bit of resource management. It's not a hard day count, but in Pikmin 3 you need to manage like your juice supply. I'm pretty sure is what the like resource management in that game is. Like you need to have X amount of juice to like just like go like at the end of a day you need to have that much in order to like advance to the next day, whereas 2 was my personal favorite and the most relaxed out of them. There wasn't like a hard day limit. You could do things at your own pace, and but there were still the individual dungeons into that had a ton of difficulty, and a lot of them I did not survive. I don't think I'm actually
using tons of Pikmin.
Oh yeah, they were really hard.
Yeah. The first time I ever encountered a water wraith that just like completely just demolished everyone that I had. I was like, cool, good, fun game.
Lots of Pikmin ghosts.
Yes.
Yeah. Just like, it's so sad. You just like you want them all to survive, but eventually you just have to accept, okay, they're not all gonna make it.
You trusted me.
God, I remember.
But no, it's not. But not only the juice, though, but you also have to really manage like your time even more. I mean, time is always a factor in like the day time limit, but like having 3 characters that you can constantly swap between is really, I mean, it's a big time factor. I mean, you have to kind of get a lot done in a certain day to make progress on time.
Yeah, there's a lot of micromanaging in like in 1 and 2, you had like these goals where you're trying to, in 1 you're trying to get all the different parts of your spaceship back, and 2 you're expanding out from these different areas, but 3, the actual resource management and like time management is so much harder than the other two, just
Right.
because you have to manage so many things at once between like individual characters, like. And the difference between, I guess a point and click RTS where, you can just zoom around a map or like assign to hotkeys on
Right.
like a PC version, actually switching between a character that you need to physically be close to whatever the action is. If you're fighting an enemy, if you're like excavating an item, or, trying to create an electrical circuit with yellow Pikmin or whatever, like very specific, like, it is such a complex but surprisingly intuitive, RTS,
streamlined,
especially with like the GameCube games, because you're playing with a controller, and like the A button is the predominant thing that you're using. Even when you're playing with the Wii U, there's not a ton of like extra mechanics. Like you always have a face button that's dedicated to cycling through the captains that you have, so that's already one down from
right.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, though, on the Wii U version, couldn't you draw a path for the character on the tablet and like pick a character and like draw a path? So like that's kind of what I mean about like I don't know how it's going to work on the Switch, because I would definitely like just pick a character and be like, okay, I know I need to get over here to open this path, so take all the strong Pikmin, take Louis or whatever, I forget what they are, all their names are, and just like send them this way and just draw the line and then actually work with Olimar or whatever. Mm-hmm. So I don't even think Olimar was in that game actually, but whatever.
No, it was Aleph, Bethany, and Charlie, I'm pretty sure.
Gotcha. Yeah, I know it was all like new characters. Yeah, but yeah. So I wonder how that's gonna work.
You still do have that pointer on the Joy-Con. I mean, that wouldn't be quite as precise, but that's a way to potentially do some of that stuff on the TV.
It could at least maybe
how many games have used the
I think
super specific gyroscope. And,
Okami.
I think
Okami HD.
Wait, does
Okami HD?
You can paint with Okami on?
Yeah, you can do it like Wii remote style.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that rules.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
That's good.
That's true.
So I don't know. Did either of you guys ever play the Let's Play or whatever those remakes where they did the GameCube games for the Wii?
No.
Because that actually sounds like it would work pretty well if you're like, hey, I'm using the nunchuck to run around with Olimar, and then I'm pointing the Wii remote at the screen to aim at my cursor, essentially. Like that actually seems like it would work pretty well too. So
some people
maybe that
swear
gyro,
by those
maybe they're gonna go gyro.
Yeah.
On this Pikmin 3.
Yeah.
But I'm very interested. I'm hoping more people get into it, because I really do think it's an incredibly special like strategy game that, I think it's definitely a cult classic and definitely has respect, but I just wish that more people played it, because I do think it's a very special series.
Yes, although I'd be remiss if I didn't slap Nintendo on the wrist a little bit on that regard explicitly, because they took away the ability for more Wii U people to play it because they removed it from the Wii U eShop when they announced the deluxe version coming out.
And that just sucks. Like that there's no reason to do that.
There's not.
Yeah.
I don't appreciate it, and it scares me, and it reinforces my need to buy physical and spend more money than I need to on these games, so I can just have them forever in my clutches.
Oh, I do have it digitally. I have it downloaded, so I don't think I
did the
have
same
an
with
issue.
Wii U, so I guess we still have it then, but once they turn those servers off like they did with the Wii eShop, then you better not delete it.
Oh yeah, that weird grace period where you couldn't like put any more funds into it, so you just had to use the existing Wii points you had.
Yep.
I think I bought a bunch of like Mega Man 9 DLC because
I think I did the same with 10. Yeah, I did the same thing with whatever remaining eShop credit that I had.
I think I also got like Phantasy Star 2 or something on the virtual console.
Nice.
Yeah, it is kind of crazy though that you could consider like a first party Nintendo series created by Miyamoto a cult classic series. It's kind of nuts that like I do think that maybe this Switch version really could like shed some light on this series and hopefully
That'd be cool.
propel it
so.
into the future, because I hope it doesn't die here with this series, or with Pikmin 3. You know, I hope it isn't just like, oh, here's a little send off for the Pikmin series.
All these other ports seem like they've been doing gangbusters on Switch, so hopefully this is not the exception. So.
Yeah. Well, I think we could pretty much wrap up the games talk this week, guys.
Yes, sir.
All right. Well, as always, you can find us on the internet at pursuingpixels.com. We're always hanging out in the Discord if you want to talk to DJ sometime. And otherwise, all the links are at the bottom of the episode description. We've got, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, all that stuff. Most of the time, the games that I'm talking about, I've got videos on there for the 15 Minutes a Game series. I'll have links in the episode description as well for all that. Timestamps, all that good stuff. So, yeah, thanks for listening as always, and we will be back next week. Take care.
Bye-bye.
See ya. Okay, but they did make Mario Picross.
They also made Pokemon Pinball and The World Ends With You, apparently.
What the fuck?
What?
Japanese developer Jupiter Corporation.
And like every single Picross for the... Okay, they did make Pokemon Picross. Okay, motherfuckers, if you made Pokemon Picross, why didn't you make a good Picross for the Switch? Okay, I'm gonna go fucking ham on this. Yeah, I'm keeping that in the can for episode 2. Let's go. Let's talk Dauntless.